Thank you very much. Thank you, Paul, for those very kind words. Alex, thank you. Thank you all for your exceedingly warm welcome. Speaking of that, the temperature in Phoenix is 76 degrees today. I thought you might want to know that. That's from the Chamber of Commerce in Phoenix, Arizona. I thank you for being here. I thank you for taking your time on this Sunday afternoon to be here on behalf of freedom, democracy, and for the people of Ukraine, and not just Ukraine, but the entire region. Because I believe, with everything I know, that Vladimir Putin's ambitions are to restore the Russian Empire. And that doesn't just mean Ukraine, but it means first and foremost Ukraine, because Ukraine was where the Russian Empire began, as we know. But his ambitions, as he has said on many occasions, the biggest mistake of the 20th century was the breakup of the Soviet Union. He says that. And everything that he has said since and done since indicates that his ambitions are to do exactly that. I'd like to say how proud I am to serve in the United States Senate with my friend Mark Kirk, a man of courage who's also served his country in uniform. And he looks to me like he's on the road to recovery and he's doing great, and I can assure you his little bout that he had has not kept him from being one of the most active and important members of the United States Senate. So Mark, could I also mention to you that maybe many of you know, I was recently again sanctioned by Vladimir Putin. It means that I can't spend spring break in Siberia again this year. Vladimir Putin refers to me quite often, using most of the four-letter words in the Russian language. I have to tell you one quick story. It was about 2 years ago. I tweeted, "Dear Vlad, the Arab Spring is coming to a neighborhood near you." In return, I got hundreds of tweets in Russian that came back, and obviously I don't know how to read Russian. So I asked a fellow from the Library of Congress to come over and translate some of them for me. That was a mistake. I did not know there were so many words in the Russian language that entailed different types of intercourse. So when the tweets in Russian come back, I don't get them translated anymore. But you know, my dear friends, this didn't have to happen. If we had, back at the time of the Orange Revolution, if we had moved forward then to make Ukraine part of NATO, which many of us wanted to happen, if we had told Vladimir Putin that if he violated the Budapest Agreement, I know I insult many of your intelligence when I remind you of these things. The Budapest Agreement, in return for Ukraine giving up its nuclear weapons inventory, guaranteed the territorial integrity of Ukraine, specifically including Crimea. And Vladimir Putin, of course, has broken that agreement. And the shame of it all is that we have stood by and watched. And when other nations have nuclear weapons, how do you think they will react to requests for them to get rid of their nuclear weapons when they see what has happened in Ukraine? So this is not only important about breaking their word to Ukraine, it's about the validity of any commitment when we try to combat the spread of nuclear weapons. And Vladimir Putin has reverted, he and Lavrov have reverted to the old rhetoric of the Soviet Union as well. Remember right after Crimea and Vladimir Putin said, well, those aren't Russian troops, they can get uniforms from local stores. But that's the old kind of Soviet Union rhetoric, that blatant lies that everybody knows they're lying, but they don't care. And of course, Vladimir Putin continues to now threaten the other nations. What do I worry about? I worry that the next may be Mariupol. He is already moving troops and equipment into eastern Ukraine. Every time that Vladimir Putin makes a move, our European friends and this President of the United States say, you better not do anything else. Does anybody remember Crimea? Does anybody remember the shoot down of a Malaysian airliner that was clearly a Russian equipment? Does anybody remember Donetsk now? Are they going to forget if he goes to Mariupol? Are they going to forget if he moves across southern Ukraine to Moldova, where there's 1,400 Russian peacekeepers? Peacekeepers, I use that word loosely. And what about my Lithuanian, Estonian, and Latvian friends who are here, whose Russian-speaking peoples are subjected to a barrage of Russian propaganda 24/7? And the question, too, is, what if Vladimir Putin decided to take a couple of provinces in Russian-speaking provinces in one of these countries? What would NATO do? I think it's a legitimate question. So I stand before you not as a Republican, not as a Democrat, but I stand before you as a man who loves your country, a man who's had the opportunity to see the beauty of its people and the wonder of one of the most beautiful parts of the world. A person who will always remember, as long as I live, I will never forget being at the Maidan. I will never forget 200 or 300,000 people in the freezing cold, many of them hungry, there because they wanted what so many of us here take for granted. A few months ago, a man named Boris Nemtsov was in my office. And at the end of our conversation, I said to Boris, who I got to know over many years, I said, I'm afraid for your safety. I'm afraid they may try to kill you. Boris Nemtsov said, I think they will try to kill me, but I have to go back. I have to go back to my country because I want it free of Vladimir Putin and his corruption. And yes, what was Boris Nemtsov about to do? Boris Nemtsov was about to reveal compelling information about Russian involvement in Ukraine, and he was killed for it. Just as those demonstrators were killed in the square, where we still have memorials, as you know, in the Maidan. And now, our dear and beloved youth of Ukraine are shedding their blood in defense of freedom and seeking to rid their country of the Russian presence. And I'm embarrassed as I stand in front of you. I'm embarrassed and ashamed that the United States of America will not provide the Ukrainian people with your help and your dedication and your love. They will survive, and someday we will all celebrate a whole, free, democratic Ukraine. Thank you, and God bless.